Okay, in this part of learning module number 8, we're going to go over the 990 form for the Matrix Theater Company. So if you don't have that in front of you, you need to get it in front of you. Okay, so if you only have a short amount of time and you need to just kind of scan a 990, there's actually a lot of information that you can get from looking at page 1 and page 2. You can figure out the name of the organization, its tax-exempt status, when it was formed, so the year of formation there, where they're located, the 990 will always say what time period this form represents. So it's the 2014 form, but it actually takes them, as you'll see, through September 30th, 2015. Part 1 is a great summary. I always like to look at, how big is the organization, not from a dollar perspective, but from a people perspective. So you can see how many people are on the board, how many individuals they have, how many volunteers they utilize. Then you get into revenues and expenses, which of course we're used to seeing. And here you get 2 years of data, which is great because there's a nice comparison there and it allows you to really see what's happening over time in the organization. We get into total assets and liabilities, so that of course leads us into net assets, which we're familiar with from the financial statements. Part 2 is going to be our signature block, which is, who is the president and who prepared this information. And then we're going to get into, program services and what is this organization set to do and how much do they spend on doing it. And so, looking at Matrix Theater Company, we can see that this year they had a tough year, right? They had a deficit of $25,000. Their net assets, of course, went down accordingly. They had a very good year, or at least a much larger year, the year before in fiscal year 2013. So we're going to look throughout the financial statements for clues about what's the difference here between the 2013 year where they brought in $509,000 and this year where they brought in just under $400,000. Okay, on pages 3 through 5, we're going to get that list of disclosures that I talked about. So basically, it's a series of questions that are designed to kind of give us information or insight into what types of things does the organization do. And you'll often see that if they say yes, then they have to complete a special section or a special schedule that gives us more information. So there's questions about investments, our endowment, there's questions about our audit, there's questions about our land, our buildings, where grants come from, all sorts of different questions. And you're going to go through and you're going to scan the questions and all the check boxes and look for things that say yes, and that's what you're going to especially pay attention to. So whenever you see a yes, let's take on page 5, did the enter the number of employees reported. This is line 2A on page 5. Okay, there's 17 employees. If at least one is reported, did they file all the required federal employment tax returns? Yes, that's good. So that, that lets us know that they're in compliance. And so basically you just kind of read through these and look for things that don't look like they should. So this next section, part 6, which begins on page 6, is actually one of my favorite parts of the 990 because you get some insight into how the organization is governed. So you're going to start by scanning for yeses. We see a yes on page 6, question 2, which is, did any officer, director, trustee, or key employee have a family relationship or a business relationship with any other officer? That's checked yes. So we're going to have to look for more details about that, and later on in the financials we actually will find it. But that would raise a red flag because what we're saying is there's some sort of relationship between two members of our governing body, which, generally speaking is not a great thing, but, it could be very benign. We'll find out. Let's see. So we're going to go down and we're going to look for disclosures. How do we make our Form 990 available. It's on Another's website, but you can also request it. Then we're going to get into, on page 7, who's on the board, who spends more time on the board. Dr. Sean Nethercutt, on line 11 on the list of board members, is our executive director. This is normally where you would see her compensation listed. You don't see it here, which is unique. And, we'll see if we can see it a little bit later on. You can see that she's listed as the key employee. And that's the information that we have right now. Okay, on page 9, we get into some details about revenues. Some things we can tell by looking at this. The organization does not have a membership program. They did not do any fundraising events throughout the year, because those would be listed. They receive $43,000 from government grants, and then $272,000 from what we would consider other grants. So that might be corporate, that might be foundation, that might be individuals. They also receive, about $69,000 from program fees. So that would be earned revenue. And then they have a small investment income. So we'll want to check later on to see what type of funds they have in those investments. And then we will also be able to gain some more information about, I always look at this and I say, well, what do they do, but what don't they do? So this organization right now doesn't have rental property. It doesn't have, or at least it doesn't rent out its rental property. They don't seem to have any other kind of earned income. It's all program fees. They don't have any royalties, so I always look at for what's not checked when I look at the statement of revenues. Okay, now we're going to get into, on pages 10 through 12, some of the information that we're used to seeing on the financial reports. So we're going to see our statement of functional expenses, the breakdown you can see between program services, management, and fundraising. It's pretty great information, very well broken out. On page 11, we're going to see the balance sheet, which of course is the statement of financial position that we're used to seeing, or that we talked about in learning module number 7. Assets and liabilities are going to be there. We're also going to see our unrestricted, temporarily restricted, and permanently restricted net assets. And then there's going to be a reconciliation of that, which is the reconciliation between revenues and expenses and assets and liabilities. There's going to be, we see there that on page 12, that the organization uses an accrual accounting system, that they do have an independent audit that's completed every year, and any other issues that they had. Okay, and then finally at the end, there's going to be a series of schedules, a series of other information, if you will. Almost every organization is going to have a Schedule A attached to it, which talks about why they exist and how they maintain their nonprofit status. There's going to be information, and I think one of the things that I always look for is, you'll see it on page 15, so that's page 3 of Schedule A, and it's 5 years of information about the public support that the organization has received. So you really get to see trends over time, and whether this organization is on an upswing, a downswing, or whether it fluctuates from year to year. I always find that really interesting. You're going to get more details about the key contributors to the organization. So they're going to have to list out some of their key donors by name, by address. You're going to get information about their assets. So if they have land, you're going to get more details. If they have investments, you're going to get more details. And then there's other disclosures. And so at the end, and on the Matrix Theater Company's financial statements, do you remember how we were looking for, that box that was checked that said that there was a relationship between two members of the governing board? Well, lo and behold, on page 27, that is disclosed, that Wesley and Sean Nethercutt are co-founders, and that there is a relationship between the executive director and someone who directs some of the plays at times. And then as you go on down, you'll see some other disclosures that that are required or that provide additional explanations about what's happening in the organization. So with that, I think we've gone over the 990. When you're ready, you can go on to the review of key concepts.